At Morixa Tales, we believe in the power of storytelling. Our scripts weave together deep emotions and dramatic turns to deliver justice where it is most needed. Experience captivating mysteries where the truth eventually shines through, leaving a lasting impact on your heart and mind.
6 years in this family and you still can't even make real money. My husband scoffed during my birthday dinner, his voice thick with whiskey. You're just a useless little blogger living off my name. A few people around the table chuckled. His mother shook her head in disgust. Then he leaned closer and sneered loud enough for everyone to hear. Without me, you'd still be that broke orphan with nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply smiled and reached for my phone. Are you finished? I asked calmly. Because in just a few minutes, everyone at that table was about to learn exactly how wrong they were. I'm so grateful you're here with me. This journey taught me that silence can be survival, but truth sets you free. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I'd love to know this message reached you. Note, this story blends creative elements for educational impact. Any similarities to actual people or places are coincidental, but the lessons shared are what truly matter. The morning light sliced through the single window of my studio apartment in East Austin, catching the edge of the mirror I'd hung on the wall 6 years ago. I stood there now, staring at my reflection, wondering if the woman looking back at me was still the same girl who'd walked into the Sterling mansion on her wedding day. 32 years old today, October 10th, 2024, a Thursday, and not a single text on my phone to wish me a happy birthday. Not from Dominic, my husband, not from his mother, Victoria, not from his father, William, not even from his sisters, Adrian or Penelope. Nothing. I'd stopped expecting it 3 years ago, stopped hoping 2 years ago, and stopped caring 1 year ago. But today was different. I turned away from the mirror and picked up my phone from the small wooden table beside my bed. The screen lit up showing a single notification. Not a birthday wish, not a call, just a suggestion from my phone's algorithm. You haven't checked the wandering fork in 2 hours. Would you like to open it? I smiled. The algorithm knew me better than my own husband did. I didn't open the app, not yet. Instead, I swiped to my messages. One new text from Nina. Today is the day. Are you ready? I typed back without hesitation. I've been ready for 6 years. Nina had been my best friend since college, back when I still believed the world was full of people who cared. She'd been the only one who stood by me after my parents died in 2011. The only one who didn't look at me with pity or try to fix me with empty words. When my life started splitting into 2 versions 3 years ago, the one everyone saw and the one I kept hidden, she became more than a friend. She became my assistant, my partner, the only person who knew the truth. I set the phone down and walked to the small kitchenette. The studio wasn't much, 400 square feet. A bed in one corner, a desk in the other, a tiny bathroom and a kitchen barely big enough for one person. But it was mine. Paid for in cash 5 years ago under my maiden name. Bennett, not Sterling. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the pot I'd made an hour earlier, then leaned against the counter and stared at the wall. There was a photograph there pinned with a single thumbtack. My parents, Thomas and Sarah Bennett, taken in the summer of 2010, a year before they died. I was 19 when the car accident happened. A drunk driver, head-on collision on Interstate 35, both of them gone in an instant. I remember standing at their funeral in a black dress I'd borrowed from a neighbor, numb, surrounded by people I barely knew. My mother's sister came up to me afterward, told me she was sorry, then disappeared. I never heard from her again. My father's brother offered to let me stay with him for a few weeks, but I could see the relief in his eyes when I said no. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, no savings, no plan. Just grief so heavy I could barely breathe, except Walter and Evelyn. Walter Bennett, my father's uncle, a man I'd only met twice before the accident, once at a family reunion when I was 7 and once at my high school graduation. He was 70 years old then, a retired French chef who'd spent his life working in kitchens across Texas. His wife Evelyn was 68, quiet and kind with soft hands that always smelled like lavender soap. They took me in without question, gave me their spare room in the small house on Maple Street in Hyde Park, fed me, let me cry, let me heal. And when I was ready, Walter taught me how to cook. Not the basics, not scrambled eggs and toast. The real stuff. The kind of cooking that takes years to master and a lifetime to understand. He'd pull out his old notebooks, yellowed and stained, filled with recipes he'd collected over 5 decades. He'd hand me a knife stand beside me at the stove and say in his quiet, patient voice, "You want to know the secret? It's not the ingredients. It's the time, the patience, the love you put into it." Seiyuan? I learned. I watched. I absorbed everything he taught me. And for the first time since my parents died, I felt something other than grief. I felt purpose. And then in March of 2016, Walter died. Heart attack, 77 years old, gone in his sleep. Evelyn started slipping after that. First it was small things. Forgetting where she put her keys. Forgetting what day it was. Asking me the same question 3 times in an hour. Then it got worse. By 2018, she didn't remember my name most days. By 2020, she didn't recognize me at all. Alzheimer's. I moved her into a memory care facility in Hyde Park close enough that I could visit her 3 times a week. It cost $1,800 a month, but I didn't care. She'd given me a home when I had nothing. The least I could do was make sure she was safe, comfortable, and surrounded by people who would care for her when her own mind couldn't. I blinked, pulling myself out of the past, and set my coffee cup down. The clock on the wall read 7:15. I had exactly 12 hours and 45 minutes before the dinner at the Sterling Mansion. 12 hours and 45 minutes before everything changed. I walked back to the bed and picked up the small black USB drive from the nightstand. It was no bigger than my thumb, but it held 6 years of evidence. Bank statements, screenshots, audio recordings, video clips, legal documents, financial records. Everything I'd collected since the day I realized Dominic wasn't the man I thought he was. Since the day I understood what his family really thought of me. I turned the USB over in my hand, feeling its weight. It was light, almost nothing. A few grams of plastic and metal, but tonight it would be the heaviest thing in that mansion. Tonight it would bring down an empire. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Nina. "I've got the helicopter on standby. Pilot's ready. Are you sure about this?" I smiled and typed back, "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." I set the USB down, carefully picked up my coffee, and walked back to the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same girl who'd stood in that church 6 years ago, wearing a white dress borrowed from a bridal shop and promising to love a man who would spend the next 6 years tearing her down piece by piece. She wasn't the same girl who'd cried herself to sleep in this studio apartment, wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. No, she was someone else now, someone stronger, someone smarter, someone who'd learned to survive in silence, someone who'd built an empire in secret right under the noses of the people who thought she was nothing, someone who'd waited 6 years for the perfect moment to strike. And tonight was that moment. I raised my coffee cup to my reflection and whispered the words I'd been rehearsing for months, the words that would become the opening line of the greatest performance of my life. By midnight, the Sterling family will finally know who I really am, and they'll never look at me the same way again. I drained the last of my coffee, set the cup in the sink, and turned toward the closet. The emerald green dress hung there, still wrapped in dry cleaning plastic. Designer. Expensive. Something I'd bought with my own money, not theirs. Something that would make Victoria's condescending comments about my Target wardrobe seem like distant echoes of a woman who'd underestimated me for the last time. Tonight I would walk into that mansion as Charlotte Bennett Sterling, the quiet, defeated wife they'd spent 6 years belittling, and I would leave as Charlotte Bennett, the woman who'd taken everything they loved and made it hers. The countdown had begun. Let me take you back to where it all started. Not the blog, not the money, but the kitchen on Maple Street where my grandfather taught me that cooking is love made useful. November 2011, 3 weeks after the funeral. I was 19, sitting at Walter and Evelyn's dining table, staring at scrambled eggs I couldn't eat. The house smelled like old wood and lavender. Walter sat across from me, a cup of black coffee in his hand. He was 70 with silver hair and hands that had spent 50 years holding knives. He didn't speak for a long time, just watched, waited. Finally, he set his coffee down. "You're not eating." I shook my head. You haven't eaten in 3 days. He stood, walked around the table, and placed a hand on my shoulder. Come with me. He led me into the kitchen. Small, spotless, a gas stove, a wooden counter, copper pots hanging from the ceiling, everything in its place. Walter pulled a cast iron skillet from the cabinet and handed me a knife. What are we making? I asked. Doesn't matter, he said. You're going to learn how to cook. Not because you need to eat, but because you need to do something with your hands. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. Every evening after Evelyn went to bed, Walter and I stood in that kitchen and he taught me. Not just recipes, the real stuff, techniques, secrets, how to hold a knife properly, how to julienne an onion without crying, how to sear a steak so the crust is perfect, how to make a roux that doesn't burn. Cooking. He said one night is about time. If you rush it, it falls apart. If you give it the time it needs, it becomes something beautiful. By the summer of 2012, I could make almost everything he could. French onion soup, coq au vin, beef bourguignon, crème brûlée. But there was one thing he hadn't taught me yet. The reduction sauce. Walter's signature dish. The thing that had made him famous in Chicago back in the 1980s when he was the head chef at a French bistro on Rush Street. It was a red wine reduction infused with shallots, thyme, butter, and something else. Something he never told anyone. I asked him about it once, and he just smiled. That one's a secret. But in August of 2012, on my 22nd birthday, he finally showed me. He pulled a notebook from the drawer beside the stove. Old, yellowed pages. Cover held together with duct tape. He flipped through it slowly until he found the page he was looking for. This, he said, tapping the page, is the only written record of the recipe. I've never shared it with anyone. Not the restaurant, not my old colleagues, not even your grandmother. I looked at the page, faded handwriting, ingredients, measurements, temperatures, step-by-step instructions, and at the bottom a single line, "The secret is time and trust." Walter closed the notebook and handed it to me. It's yours now, protect it. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight. It wasn't just a recipe, it was his legacy. Why me? I asked. He smiled. Because you're the only one who understands what it means to create something from nothing, to take pain and turn it into something beautiful. That night, we made the sauce together. 3 hours, slow simmering, constant stirring, tasting, adjusting. When it was done, we poured it over 2 steaks and sat at the dining table. This is the best thing I've ever tasted, I said. Walter laughed. It's not the sauce, it's the work you put into it. That's what makes it special. A few weeks later, I started the blog. The Wandering Fork. I didn't use my real name, didn't show my face, just photos of food paired with essays about life loss and learning to move forward. I posted twice a week every Tuesday and Friday. At first, no one read it. Just Walter. He was my only follower for the first 3 months, but he never missed a post. You've got something here, he told me one night. People need this. By the end of 2013, the blog had 10,000 followers. By the end of 2014, 50,000, and by the end of 2015, 200,000. I was making $2,000 a month from ads and brand partnerships, enough to help Walter and Evelyn with the bills, enough to save. Walter was proud. This is what you were meant to do, he said. But in March of 2016, everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning. I was at the grocery store when I got the call from Evelyn. Charlotte, she said, her voice shaking. Something's wrong with Walter. I dropped the basket and ran. By the time I got to the house, the ambulance was already there. Walter was on the floor of the kitchen, unconscious. Evelyn was kneeling beside him, holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. He was making breakfast, she said, and then he just collapsed. At the hospital, they told me it was a heart attack, a massive one. There was nothing they could do. He died 2 hours later. I sat beside his bed, holding his hand, watching the monitor flatline. Evelyn sat on the other side, silent. He loved you so much, she whispered. That night, I went back to the house on Maple Street. I walked into the kitchen, turned on the light, and stared at the stove. The cast iron skillet was still there. The notebook was on the counter right where he'd left it. I picked it up, opened it to the page with the reduction sauce, and read the words at the bottom. The secret is time and trust. I closed the notebook and cried. The next day, I wrote a post. Not a recipe, not a story, just a tribute to the man who'd saved me, who'd taught me that life wasn't about what you lose, but what you choose to do with what's left. I titled it, "The Chef Who Taught Me to Live Again." Within 24 hours, it had 50,000 shares. Comments flooded in, messages from people who'd lost someone, people who were grieving, people who needed to know they weren't alone. It was the first time the blog went viral. And it was the moment I realized that what I was doing mattered, that food wasn't just about taste. It was about connection, about healing, about love made useful. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that someone I would come to trust would steal this legacy, or that I would spend years planning to take it back. They say love is blind. I say love is a con artist when it's wearing a tailored suit and knows exactly what to say. August 2016, 5 months after Walter died. I was still grieving, still figuring out how to live in a world without him. The blog was growing. 200,000 followers, $3,000 a month, enough to keep me afloat. But I was lonely. I didn't realize how lonely until I met Dominic Sterling. It was a charity gala at the Four Seasons in downtown Austin, one of those black tie events where people write checks to feel good about themselves. I wasn't supposed to be there. Nina had convinced me to go. "You need to get out of the house," she'd said. "You've been locked in that studio for 5 months. Go, drink wine, pretend to be normal." So I went. I was standing by the bar nursing a glass of champagne when he walked up to me. Tall, dark hair, sharp jawline, suit that probably cost more than my rent, and a smile that made me forget just for a second how much I missed Walter. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said. I laughed, that obvious, "Only to someone who feels the same way." He extended his hand. "Dominic Sterling." I shook it. "Charlotte Bennett." "Bennett," he repeated. "Any relation to the food blogger?" I froze. "How did you—" "I follow the wandering fork," he said. "Your tribute to your grandfather." It made me cry. I don't cry often. I didn't know what to say. No one in my real life knew about the blog, not even Evelyn. It was my secret, my safe space. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," I said. "I'm just surprised." He smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, you're incredibly talented. What you do matters." And just like that, I was hooked. Over the next 4 months, Dominic swept me off my feet. Flowers delivered to my studio, dinners at the best restaurants in Austin, weekend trips to Fredericksburg and Marble Falls. Texts that said things like, "I can't stop thinking about you," and "You make me want to be better." He was attentive, thoughtful. He asked about the blog, about my grief, about my dreams. He listened in a way no one else had. He made me feel seen. In December, he proposed. We were at Mount Bonnell overlooking the city, the sun setting behind the hills. He got down on one knee, pulled out a ring, and said, "I know it's fast, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Marry me, Charlotte." I said yes. I didn't think twice. Didn't stop to wonder why he was moving so quickly. Didn't see the red flags. I just saw someone who loved me. Someone who made me feel less alone. We got married in February 2017, a small ceremony, just his family, Nina, and a few friends. Evelyn was there, but she didn't recognize me. She smiled when I walked down the aisle, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. Dominic's family was polite. His mother, Victoria, hugged me and said, "Welcome to the family, dear." But there was something in her voice, something cold. His father, William, shook my hand and said, "We're glad Dominic found someone." His sisters Adrienne and Penelope barely spoke to me. Adrienne smiled tightly and said, "Congratulations." Penelope looked me up and down and said nothing. But I told myself it didn't matter. I was marrying Dominic, not his family. The Sterling family owned 2 businesses. Sterling Properties, the real estate development company, where Dominic worked as VP under his father William. And Sterling House, a struggling French bistro in downtown Austin that his mother Victoria had opened back in the 90s. It had been losing money for years, and the family was desperate to save it. So desperate that they'd asked Dominic to help turn it around, even though he knew nothing about restaurants. 2 months later in April, I cooked dinner for the Sterling family. It was the first time I'd hosted them at the mansion. Dominic had insisted. They need to see you in your element, he'd said. Show them what you're capable of. So I made a full French meal, coq au vin, roasted vegetables, and for the main course steak with Walter's reduction sauce. I'd brought the notebook with me, followed the recipe exactly. 3 hours of simmering, constant stirring, tasting, adjusting, just like Walter had taught me. When I brought the plates to the table, everyone went silent. Victoria took a bite and looked up at me. "This is extraordinary," she said. William nodded. "Best thing I've had in years." Even Adrienne and Penelope seemed impressed. Dominic squeezed my hand under the table. "I told you," he whispered. "You're amazing." That night, after his family left, we were cleaning up the kitchen. Dominic was rinsing dishes, and I was putting away leftovers. "That sauce," he said, "and what's in it?" I hesitated. The recipe was Walter's, his legacy, the one thing he'd asked me to protect. But Dominic was my husband, the man I loved, the man who'd made me feel whole again. "It's a red wine reduction," I said. "My grandfather's recipe. He was famous for it back in Chicago." Dominic looked at me. "Do you think it could work at Sterling House?" Sterling House was the family restaurant, a struggling French bistro in downtown Austin that had been losing money for years. "Maybe," I said. "I mean, it's a really special sauce. People used to come from all over just to try it." He smiled. "Would you share the recipe with me? I think it could save the restaurant." I should have said no, should have listened to the voice in my head that said, "Walter told you to protect it." But I didn't. I wanted to help, wanted to prove to his family that I wasn't just some girl from nowhere, that I could contribute. So I wrote down the recipe, every ingredient, every step, and I gave it to him. A month later in May, Nina and I went to Sterling House for lunch. I wanted to see if they'd added the sauce to the menu. They had. But it wasn't called Walter's Reduction Sauce. It was called Sterling House Signature Sauce. No mention of Walter, no mention of me, just the Sterling name. I stared at the menu, my hands shaking. Nina looked at me. "Charlotte," she said, "that's your grandfather's recipe." "I know," I whispered. That night, I confronted Dominic. We were in the kitchen of the mansion, and I held up the menu. "This is Walter's sauce," I said. "Why doesn't it say that?" Dominic didn't even look up from his phone. "The chef tweaked it, made it his own. Don't worry about it." "Don't worry about it," I repeated. "This was my grandfather's legacy. I gave it to you because I trusted you." He finally looked at me, and for the first time I saw something cold in his eyes. "Charlotte," he said slowly, "you're overreacting. It's just a sauce. The restaurant needed help and you helped. Be happy about that." I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because I knew. In that moment, I knew I'd made a mistake. But we'd just gotten married. His family already looked down on me. I couldn't start a fight. Not yet. So I said nothing. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Dominic slept beside me, and I made a promise to myself. One day I would take back what was mine. I just didn't know it would take 6 years. The first year of marriage is supposed to be the honeymoon phase. Ours lasted exactly 4 months. I moved into the Sterling Mansion in March 2017. It was beautiful. 10,000 square feet. High ceilings, marble floors, a kitchen bigger than my entire studio apartment. But it didn't feel like home. It felt like a museum. Cold, sterile, empty. Dominic's room became our room. His closet became our closet. His life became my life. At first I told myself it was normal, that it takes time to adjust, that I'd get used to it. But I never did. The blog kept growing. By the summer of 2017, I had 200,000 followers, $3,000 a month. Brands were reaching out for partnerships. Readers were sending me messages about how the blog had changed their lives. I was proud, excited. I thought Dominic would be too. One night in June, we were having dinner in the dining room, just the two of us. I was telling him about a new partnership with a spice company, how they wanted to feature my recipes in their catalog, how it could bring in another $1,000 a month. He set his fork down and looked at me. "That's cute," he said, "but maybe you should focus on being a wife." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're spending a lot of time on that blog, a lot of time on your phone, and not a lot of time here." "I'm here every night," I said. He sighed. "Physically, yes, but mentally, you're always somewhere else." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. A few weeks later, I made plans to have lunch with Nina. We hadn't seen each other since the wedding, and I missed her. I needed someone to talk to. But when I told Dominic, he frowned. "Nina," he said, "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "She's a bad influence," he said, "always encouraging you to do your own thing. You're married now, Charlotte. You need to think about us, not just yourself." "Having lunch with my best friend isn't—" "I'm not saying you can't see her," he interrupted. "I'm just saying maybe you should think about what's more important, your marriage or your friendships." I canceled lunch with Nina. I told myself he was right, that I needed to prioritize my marriage. But the truth was I was scared. Scared of making him angry. Scared of what would happen if I said no. By the fall, things got worse. It was Thanksgiving. The entire Sterling family was at the mansion for dinner. Victoria, William, Adrian and her husband, Penelope. All of them sitting around the table talking about business and real estate and things I didn't understand. I tried to contribute, tried to join the conversation. "I just reached 250,000 followers on the blog," I said. "It's been amazing. People are really connecting with the recipes and the stories." Victoria looked at me over her wine glass. "That's nice, dear, but maybe you should think about real career options or children." William nodded. "Blogging is a hobby, not a career." Adrienne smirked. "How much do you even make from it?" $3,000 a month, I said quietly. Penelope laughed. "That's barely rent." I looked at Dominic, hoping he'd defend me, but he didn't. He just sipped his wine and said nothing. After dinner, when everyone had left, I was cleaning up the kitchen. Dominic walked in, loosening his tie. "You embarrassed me tonight," he said. I stopped scrubbing the pot. "What?" "Talking about your blog. My family doesn't care about that. They think it's a waste of time. And honestly, so do I." "You said you loved the blog," I said. "You said it mattered." He shrugged. "That was before we got married. Things are different now." "How?" "Because now you're a Sterling," he said. "And Sterlings don't waste their time on silly hobbies. So do me a favor. Don't bring it up again." I stood there holding the pot tears burning in my eyes. But I didn't cry. Not in front of him. By February 2018, I'd stopped talking about the blog, stopped posting as much, stopped replying to messages. The followers kept growing, but I felt like I was shrinking. One night, Dominic came home drunk. It was late, past midnight. I was in bed scrolling through comments on my latest post. He stumbled into the room, yanked the phone out of my hand, and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. "You're always on that damn phone," he shouted. "What kind of wife are you?" I stood up, my heart pounding. "Dominic, you're drunk." "So what?" he said. "At least when I'm drunk, I'm honest." "You want honesty? You're pathetic, Charlotte. Your blog is pathetic. Your life is pathetic. You're nothing without me." The word hit me like a slap, pathetic. I'd never heard him talk to me like that before. Never seen that look in his eyes. Cold, mean, like I was nothing. I didn't say anything, just stood there frozen while he turned and walked out of the room. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened, made coffee, asked me how I slept, kissed me on the forehead before he left for work. Like he hadn't called me pathetic, like he hadn't thrown my phone across the room, like he hadn't made me feel smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. And that's when I realized this was who he was. This was who he'd always been. I'd just been too blind to see it. I started sleeping in the guest room that week. Dominic didn't even notice. Or maybe he did and he just didn't care. They say abuse isn't always bruises. Sometimes it's 1,000 paper cuts delivered with a smile over dinner. This is what the next 2 years looked like. May 2018, family dinner. We were sitting in the dining room, the entire Sterling family, Victoria, William, Adrian, Penelope, Dominic, and me. Victoria set down her wine glass and looked at me. "When are you going to quit that blog, dear?" I looked up from my plate. "I'm sorry." "The blog," she repeated. "It's been years. Surely you've gotten it out of your system by now." "It's my career," I said quietly. She laughed, a sharp, cold laugh. "A career pays the bills, Charlotte. Dominic pays your bills." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. September 2018, shopping with Adrienne. She'd invited me to lunch. I thought maybe she was trying to be friendly, to bond. We were walking through a boutique in downtown Austin when she stopped and looked at my dress. "Is that from Target?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I got it on sale." She wrinkled her nose. "Charlotte, you're a sterling now. You can't wear fast fashion. It reflects poorly on the family." Before I could respond, she pulled a dress off the rack and handed it to me. "Here, try this one. I'll buy it for you." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to," she said, "but someone needs to teach you how to dress like you belong." I took the dress, said thank you, and hated myself for it. November 2018, Thanksgiving. We were in the living room about to take a family photo. Victoria had hired a professional photographer. Everyone was gathered around the fireplace. Victoria looked at me and smiled. "Charlotte, sweetie, would you mind taking the photo for us?" I blinked. "You want me to take the photo?" "Yes. You're good with cameras, aren't you? From all that blogging." I stood there holding the camera while the Sterling family posed together, smiling, laughing, looking perfect. And I wasn't in the picture. February 2019, Valentine's Day. I'd made a reservation at our favorite restaurant, bought a new dress, did my hair and makeup. I wanted to surprise Dominic, to show him I was trying. When he came home, I was waiting in the living room. "Ready?" I asked. He looked confused. "For what?" "Dinner," I said. "It's Valentine's Day." He sighed. "Charlotte, I have a work dinner tonight. I told you this morning." "You didn't tell me." "Yes, I did," he said. "You just weren't listening. You never listen." He left, and I sat alone in the living room in my new dress and ordered takeout. July 2019, lunch with Penelope. She'd invited me to a cafe in Westlake. I thought maybe she wanted to get to know me better. But halfway through lunch, she pulled out her phone and showed me an Instagram photo, a selfie of her at a party. 15,000 likes. "Your pasta post got 300 likes, she said, scrolling through my blog. "That's kind of sad." She laughed, not meanly, but not kindly either, just dismissively, like I wasn't worth her time. December 2019, holiday dinner. This was the worst one. I'd been working on something new, an online cooking academy, a way to teach people the techniques Walter had taught me. I'd spent months planning it, building it. I was so proud. I mentioned it at dinner, just casually. "I'm launching an online course next month. It's going to be amazing." Dominic looked at me across the table. He'd been drinking a lot. "Another project that's going nowhere," he said. Everyone went silent. "What I said." "You heard me," he said. "Another project, like that cookbook proposal that got rejected, like the brand deals that fell through. You're a failure, Charlotte. Your blog is a joke." I felt my face go hot. My hands started shaking. "Dominic," Victoria said softly, "that's enough." But he didn't stop. He leaned forward, his voice louder now. "You want to know the truth? You're pathetic. You think you're building something you're not. You're just wasting time." I stood up, tears streaming down my face, and left the table. Behind me, I heard Dominic laugh. "Can't even take feedback. Pathetic." No one followed me. No one checked if I was okay. I locked myself in the guest room and cried until I couldn't breathe. April 2020. Nighttime routine. This became my new normal. Every night, I'd go to the guest room while the Sterling family gathered downstairs. I could hear them, laughing, talking, having drinks in the living room. I was never invited, never included. I'd sit on the bed with my laptop scrolling through my dashboard, the blog, the academy, the brand deals, the numbers. And that's when I saw it. $2.1 million. That's how much I'd made in the past year. From the blog, from the academy, from the spice line I'd quietly launched 6 months earlier. From partnerships and affiliate deals and everything I'd built in secret, $2.1 million. And they had no idea. They thought I was broken, thought I'd given up, thought the blog was a hobby that barely made rent. But I was building an empire, quietly, carefully, in the dark hours when they weren't watching. I closed the laptop and looked at the door. I could still hear them downstairs, still hear Dominic's laugh, and I smiled, because they had no idea what was coming. They thought I was broken, but I was building something they couldn't even imagine, in silence, in secret, in the dark hours they never saw. While they slept, I built. While they mocked, I expanded. When they called me a failure, I'd already become a millionaire. This is how I did it. 2019, 27 years old. The blog hit 500,000 followers. I was still anonymous, still the wandering fork. No face, no name, just food and stories. Brands started reaching out. Real brands. Companies that wanted me to feature their products. $50,000 for a single campaign, $100,000 for a partnership. I said yes to the ones that made sense, no to the ones that didn't, and I saved every penny. In June, I invested in 3 struggling restaurants, one in Dallas, one in Houston, one in San Antonio. I did it anonymously through a shell company called Culinary Ventures, LLC. I owned 60% of each restaurant, brought in new chefs, redesigned the menus, trained the staff. Within 6 months, all 3 were profitable. 2020, 28 years old. COVID hit. Restaurants across the country shut down, but mine survived. We pivoted to takeout, delivery, meal kits, and we thrived. In the middle of the pandemic, I launched the Wandering Fork Spice Blends, 6 signature spices each one based on Walter's recipes. I pitched it to Whole Foods. They said yes. First year revenue, $1.8 million. Meanwhile, the blog exploded. Everyone was cooking at home. Everyone was searching for comfort. My follower count jumped to 1.2 million. In December, I launched the Online Academy, pre-recorded courses, step-by-step videos, techniques Walter had taught me. I charged $297 per course. I thought maybe a few hundred people would sign up. 15,000 people signed up in the first month. 2021, 29 years old. The Academy kept growing. By the end of the year, I had 15,000 students. That's $4.4 million in revenue. I wrote a cookbook, self-published it on Amazon. It hit #1 in 3 categories within a week, sold 100,000 copies, $1.2 million in royalties. By the end of 2021, my net worth was over $8 million. And no one knew. 2022, 30 years old. The brand deals got bigger. KitchenAid wanted me to design a signature stand mixer. Le Creuset wanted me to create a custom line of cookware. Williams-Sonoma wanted exclusive rights to my spice blends for their stores. Each deal was worth between $500,000 and $1 million. The 3 restaurants were pulling in over $2 million each in annual revenue. The Academy had 25,000 students. The spice line was now in Target and Kroger nationwide. By the end of 2022, my net worth was $22 million. And Dominic still thought I was a failure. On Christmas Eve, we were sitting in the living room, just the 2 of us. He was scrolling through his phone, and I was reading. He looked up and smirked. Still playing food blogger? When are you going to get a real job? I didn't answer, just smiled and went back to my book. Because he had no idea how I hid it all. In March 2018, I'd switched to filing taxes separately. Married filing separately instead of married filing jointly. Dominic had asked why. My accountant said it helps with your business deductions. I'd told him. Something about how your real estate losses can offset better if we file separately. He'd nodded. Dominic worked as VP at Sterling Properties, but he was also trying to save Sterling House, the family restaurant that was barely breaking, even after using Walter's stolen recipe. Between juggling 2 businesses, he had an accountant who handled all the taxes. He never looked at the returns, never asked questions, just signed where they told him to sign. So when I told him filing separately would benefit him, he believed me, and he never looked into it again. That decision saved me. Because from that point on, my income was completely separate from his. My tax returns went to a P.O. box I'd rented in East Austin. My bank statements were paperless and password protected, and Dominic never asked to see them. Why would he? He thought I was making $3,000 a month from a blog. I hired a team, a tax attorney in Dallas, a forensic accountant, a corporate formation lawyer. It cost me $250,000 a year, but it was worth it. They helped me set up a network of shell companies, legal, clean, strategic. Culinary Ventures, LLC in Texas, managed the restaurants. Bennett Media Holdings, LLC in Delaware, managed intellectual property and brand deals. Evergreen Capital, LLC in Nevada, managed investments. Wandering Fork Enterprises, LLC in Wyoming, managed the Academy. Each LLC was registered in a different state. Each one used a registered agent service to hide my name from public records. Everything was legal. Everything was clean, but it was invisible. In 2020, I created a trust, the Walter Bennett Irrevocable Trust. My lawyer was the trustee. I was the beneficiary. Assets in the trust didn't show up under my name. And if Dominic and I ever divorced, those assets would be protected. I paid full taxes. Every year, filed on time, used a Big Four accounting firm to handle everything. If the IRS ever audited me, they'd find nothing wrong. Everything was above board. But Dominic never saw it, because he never asked. The Sterling family was too arrogant to check. They assumed I was broke, assumed the blog was a hobby, assumed I needed Dominic to survive. And I let them believe it. Every month I'd transfer money into savings, into investments, into real estate. I bought the studio apartment in East Austin under an LLC, paid cash, no mortgage, no paper trail. I bought a lakefront property on Lake Travis under another LLC, 6,000 square feet, private dock, helipad, $2.1 million, cash. Dominic never knew. Because while he was at work closing real estate deals and drinking with clients, I was building an empire he couldn't even imagine. While his family mocked me over holiday dinners, I was signing contracts worth millions. While he called me pathetic, I was becoming one of the most successful food entrepreneurs in the country. And the best part, I did it all in secret, in silence. In the shadows they never bothered to look into. I had the money, I had the proof. But I needed one more thing. The perfect moment to make them see. Revenge isn't best served cold. It's best served after years of preparation, and it tastes sweetest when the enemy never sees it coming. January 2023. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard William's voice from the study. The door was half open and he was on the phone. "We need $15 million by March, or we're done," he said. "The Lakeway deal fell through and the bank is calling in the loan. If we don't come up with the money, we lose everything." I froze. Sterling Properties was in trouble. Real trouble. Bad real estate investments in 2022 had left the company drowning in debt. I walked away quietly, poured my coffee, and smiled. February 2023. 2 weeks later, William got a call from a company called Evergreen Capital LLC. They were offering a loan, $15 million, 18% interest, 24-month repayment. And if Sterling Properties defaulted, Evergreen Capital would receive 51% equity in the company. William was desperate. He said yes. He had no idea Evergreen Capital was mine. That night at dinner, William was in a good mood for the first time in months. "A silent investor saved us," he said, raising his glass. "A real businessman, someone who understands how the world works." Dominic nodded. "See, real entrepreneurs save companies, not bloggers." I smiled and said nothing. March 2020 to June 2023, Sterling House acquisition. While William was drowning in debt, I was quietly buying up Sterling House. Back in 2015, William had sold 49% of the restaurant to 10 local investors, small stakes, 3 to 5% each. He'd needed the cash to keep the restaurant afloat. When the pandemic hit in 2020, those investors panicked. They wanted out. They wanted to cut their losses. But William didn't have the money to buy them back. So I did. I hired a private investigator to identify each investor, to find out who was struggling financially, who was ready to sell. In March 2020, I bought 5% from a man named Henderson. He'd lost his job during the pandemic and needed cash. I offered him 20% above market value. He said yes immediately. I did it through Culinary Ventures, LLC. My name was nowhere on the paperwork. In August, I bought 4% from a woman named Martinez. She was retiring and wanted to liquidate her assets. I used a different LLC, Bennett Holdings. In December, I bought 6% from the Thompson brothers, another LLC, Evergreen Capital. Over the next 3 years, I bought shares from 8 more investors. I used 8 different LLCs. Each purchase was small, $50,000 to $150,000. Each transaction was under 10%, so under Texas law, I didn't have to notify William. By June 2023, I owned 47% of Sterling House. Then I had my lawyer consolidate all the LLCs under one holding company, Culinary Ventures Holdings. William received a notification in the mail. Culinary Ventures Holdings now owns 47% of Sterling House. He called his lawyer immediately. Who the hell is this? His lawyer tried to trace it. Hit a dead end. The LLCs were registered in different states, different agents, different addresses, all legal, all clean, but impossible to trace back to me. William was furious, but he didn't do anything because he still owned 51%. He still had control, for now. September 2023, the prenup. I pulled out the prenuptial agreement from 2017, the one Victoria had insisted I sign before the wedding. I met with my lawyer, a woman named Diane Carter, sharp, ruthless, the best divorce attorney in Texas. Walk me through this, I said. She read the prenup carefully. Then she looked up at me and smiled. This is the worst prenup I've ever seen, she said. For them, not for you. Why? Because it says all assets acquired before marriage remain separate property, and your empire started before you got married. The blog, the brand deals, the restaurants, the academy, everything. It's all yours. I leaned forward. What about the Sterling family? Can they claim anything? Not a dime, she said. Texas is a community property state, but the prenup protects you. Everything you earned is separate property, and there's a fidelity clause. A fidelity clause. She pointed to a line in the contract. If either party commits adultery, they forfeit any claim to marital assets. I smiled. Good to know. October 2023, the private investigator. I hired a private investigator, a man named Ray Collins, former FBI discreet, professional. I need you to follow my husband, I said. Take photos, document everything. You think he's cheating? Ray asked. I know he is, I said. 3 weeks later, Ray came back with a file. Photos, timestamps, hotel receipts. Dominic and a woman named Jessica, a paralegal at Adrian's law firm. Meetings at the Driscoll Hotel. Kissing in the parking garage. Dinner at a restaurant in Westlake. I looked at the photos and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just satisfaction. This will be useful, I said. November 2023, grandmother's will. Evelyn updated her will during a lucid moment on November 5th, peacefully, in her sleep. I was the only one at her bedside. A week later, her lawyer read the will. She'd left me the house in Hyde Park, the one where Walter had taught me to cook, the one where I'd learned to survive. It was worth $2.1 million. There was a note attached, written in Evelyn's shaky handwriting back when she still remembered who I was. The Sterling family never deserved you. This house is yours. Keep Walter's memory alive. I cried for the first time in years. December 2023, the estate. I bought a property on Lake Travis. 6,000 square feet, 2 stories, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, a private dock, and a helipad. $4.2 million cash. I started renovations immediately. An elevator, wide doorways, a bedroom on the first floor with a view of the lake. Everything Evelyn would have needed if she'd lived long enough to see it. I also bought a helicopter, a Bell 407, $1.8 million, registered under an LLC. I hired a pilot, a retired Army veteran named Captain Reynolds, paid him $200,000 a year to be on call. What's this for? He asked. You'll see, I said. By the end of December, everything was in place. The loan to Sterling Properties, 47% of Sterling House, the prenup, the evidence of Dominic's affair, the estate, the helicopter. I had 10 months until my birthday, October 10th, 2024. 10 months to prepare, 10 months to build the stage for the greatest performance of my life. The last 10 months before my 32nd birthday were the longest and shortest of my life. Every detail mattered. Every move was calculated. January to May 2024, the estate. The renovations took 5 months. The crew worked 6 days a week. I was there every day overseeing every detail. The elevator had oversized buttons. Easy for someone with limited mobility. Easy for someone with Alzheimer's. Evelyn's room was on the first floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, a bathroom with grab bars, a walk-in shower with a built-in bench, soft lighting, no sharp corners. The kitchen was professional grade, 8-burner gas stove, double ovens, a marble island big enough for prep work, and a custom glass display case for Walter's knives. I had them mounted on velvet, each one polished, each one labeled, and at the center, a brass plaque. Walter Bennett Master Chef, 1942 to 2016. There was a music room, a record player, shelves of jazz albums, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Billie Holiday, the music Walter used to play in the kitchen while we cooked. The helipad was professionally paved, reinforced concrete, FAA-approved lighting, a windsock, everything by the book. By May, the estate was finished. March 2024, the helicopter. I'd already bought the helicopter in December, a Bell 407, 6 seats, $1.8 million. Cash. It was registered under Wandering Fork Media, LLC. My name was nowhere on the paperwork. I hired Captain James Reynolds, retired Army pilot, flew Blackhawks in Iraq. Discreet, professional. $200,000 a year to be on call. Why do you need a helicopter? He asked. You'll see, I said. By March, he'd completed all the FAA certifications for private transport. We did test flights every week, from the estate to downtown Austin, from the estate to the Sterling Mansion, timing everything, making sure it was perfect. April 2024, the loan deadline. The $15 million loan to Sterling Properties was due on October 15th, 5 days after my birthday. William tried to refinance, went to every bank in Austin, Dallas, Houston, but no one would touch him. What he didn't know was that I'd quietly reached out to every lender, through intermediaries, through shell companies, and I'd made it clear that Sterling Properties was a bad investment. By mid-April, William was desperate. He tried to negotiate an extension with Evergreen Capital, my company. My lawyer told him no. The terms are clear, she said. Full repayment by October 15th, or we take 51% equity. William hung up the phone and threw it across the room. I know because Dominic told me about it that night. My dad's losing his mind, he said. Some investor is trying to take over the company. I nodded, sympathetic. That's awful. He didn't see the smile I hid behind my wine glass. June 2024, financial audit. I met with my accountant. Diane ran the numbers. Your net worth is $38.5 million, she said. I looked at the breakdown. Restaurants, $9 million, Academy, $12 million, brand deals, $8 million, investments, $6 million, cash reserves, $3.5 million. I want to set aside $5 million for Evelyn's care, I said. Even though she's gone, I want to donate it to Alzheimer's research in her name. Diane nodded. I'll set up the fund. July 2024. Sterling House evidence. I met with my lawyer. We went over the Sterling House case. You own 47%, she said. William owns 51%. But if you can prove intellectual property theft, you can force a buyout. I handed her Walter's notebook, the original, from 1987, yellowed pages, faded ink, the recipe for the reduction sauce. This is the proof, I said. She flipped through it. You'll need more than this. I handed her a file. DNA analysis. The sauce on Sterling House's menu matches Walter's recipe to 99.7% accuracy. I had a forensic food scientist run the test. She raised her eyebrows. Impressive. And this, I said, handing her another document. A signed affidavit from Evelyn before she passed, dated 2023 when she was still lucid. She confirms that Walter created the recipe, that he never gave permission for anyone to use it. My lawyer smiled. This is airtight. August 2024. Enduring the family. I kept showing up to family dinners, playing the role, the quiet, defeated wife. One night, Adrienne looked at me across the table. You're 31 now, Charlotte. Still doing that blog thing. I smiled. Yes, I enjoy it. Penelope laughed. Enjoy it all you want. Just don't expect it to pay your bills. Dominic, already drunk, leaned back in his chair. She's too weak to admit failure. That's her problem. I didn't respond, just nodded and finished my wine, because in 6 weeks they'd see exactly how wrong they were. September 2024. Final walkthrough. Nina came to the estate for the first time. She walked through every room, her mouth open. "Charlotte," she whispered, "this is incredible." We stood in the kitchen. Walter's knives gleamed in the display case. I touched the glass. He would have loved this place. Nina put her hand on my shoulder. "One more month. Are you ready?" I looked at her. "I've been ready for 6 years. Late September 2024, the invitation. Victoria called me on a Friday afternoon. "We're hosting your birthday dinner on October 10th, she said. "Just family and a few of William's business partners, nothing extravagant." "That sounds lovely," I said, my voice flat, emotionless. "Good," she said. "Wear something nice, not one of those Target dresses." She hung up. I stared at the calendar on my desk. October 10th was circled in red. Below it, I'd written in neat handwriting, "The day everything changes." I opened my laptop, pulled up Instagram, the Wandering Fork account, 2.8 million followers. I drafted a post, scheduled it for October 10th, 7 p.m. The caption read, "Tonight I'm going home, and I'm taking you with me." I attached a photo of the helicopter, the estate in the background, the lake reflecting the sunset. I hit save. In 2 weeks, I would walk into the Sterling mansion for the last time as the woman they thought I was. Sometimes the moment you stop being afraid is the moment you become dangerous. October 8th, 2024, 11:30 p.m. I was in the kitchen of the Sterling mansion standing at the stove stirring Walter's reduction sauce. The same sauce Dominic had stolen 7 years ago. The same sauce that had made Sterling House profitable. The same sauce that would destroy them in 48 hours. My laptop was open on the counter. A checklist. Everything I needed for October 10th. Helicopter ready, pilot on standby, estate finished, Instagram post scheduled, evidence compiled, lawyer briefed, exit strategy locked in. I heard footsteps, heavy, uneven, drunk. Dominic stumbled into the kitchen, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His tie was loose. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. "Still playing chef at midnight," he slurred. "Pathetic." I didn't respond, just kept stirring. He leaned against the counter, watching me. "You know what your problem is, Charlotte?" I stayed silent. "You're delusional," he said. "You think you're special, but you're not." I kept stirring, slow, steady, just like Walter had taught me. "You're just some orphan girl who got lucky because I found you," he continued. "I gave you a life, a home, a family, and what have you done with it?" "Nothing." I tasted the sauce, perfect, just like Walter used to make it. Dominic stepped closer. I could smell the whiskey on his breath. 6 years, he said. 6 years and you have nothing. No career, no money, no friends, just that stupid blog that no one reads. I set the spoon down, turned off the burner, and turned to face him. "You're right," I said. My voice was calm, flat, no emotion. He blinked, surprised. "I've spent 6 years doing nothing," I continued. 6 years being the woman you wanted me to be. Quiet, obedient, invisible. I took a step toward him. "But you know what's funny, Dominic?" I said. "You have no idea who I really am." He laughed, a sharp, bitter laugh. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't smile. Didn't break eye contact. "It means that in 2 days at my birthday dinner, you're going to find out." He stared at me. For the first time in years, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not fear, not yet, but uncertainty. "Is that a threat?" he said, trying to sound amused. "From you, this should be entertaining." I didn't answer, just held his gaze. "Get out of the kitchen, Dominic!" There was something in my voice, something he'd never heard before. Cold. Final. Absolute. He hesitated, then laughed again. "You're crazy," he muttered, turning to leave. "Absolutely crazy." He stumbled out of the kitchen, leaving his empty glass on the counter. I stood there alone, my hands shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. I picked up the spoon and tasted the sauce again. "Perfect, Walter," I whispered. I pulled out my phone and texted Nina. "He knows something's coming. He just doesn't know what." She replied immediately. "Good, let him wonder." I looked around the kitchen. The marble counters, the stainless steel appliances, the custom cabinets, everything pristine, everything expensive, everything cold. This house had never been a home. It had been a prison. I walked through the dining room. The living room, the hallway. Every room felt the same, empty, hollow. A beautiful shell with nothing inside. I stopped at the base of the staircase and looked up. The master bedroom was on the 3rd floor. Dominic would be passed out by now. He wouldn't even remember this conversation in the morning, but I would. I turned and walked to the guest room on the 1st floor, the room I'd been sleeping in for the past 3 years. I locked the door behind me. The room was small, a bed, a dresser, a single window overlooking the driveway. But it was mine, the only space in this house that belonged to me. I sat on the bed and opened my laptop, pulled up the Instagram post scheduled for October 10th, 7 p.m., the photo of the helicopter, the estate in the background, the lake reflecting the sunset. The caption, "Tonight I'm going home, and I'm taking you with me." 2.8 million people would see it. 2.8 million people would watch the Sterling family realize they'd underestimated me. I closed the laptop and lay down, stared at the ceiling. 2 more days. 2 more days of pretending. 2 more days of being the woman they thought I was. And then I would burn it all down. I thought about Walter, about the night he'd handed me the notebook, the night he'd said, "Protect it." I'd failed him once. I'd given the recipe to Dominic. I'd trusted the wrong person, but I wouldn't fail him again. In 48 hours, the world would know Walter's name. They'd know his story. They'd know what the Sterling family had stolen. And they'd see me for who I really was. Not the quiet, defeated wife. Not the orphan girl with no future. But the woman who'd built an empire in secret. The woman who'd spent 6 years planning her revenge. The woman who'd waited for the perfect moment to strike. I closed my eyes, tried to sleep, but my mind was racing. I thought about the helicopter, the estate, the knives mounted on the wall, the room I'd designed for Evelyn even though she'd never see it. I thought about Nina, the only person who'd stood by me through all of this. I thought about the 3 restaurants, the Academy, the Spice Line, the brand deals, the $38.5 million I'd earned while they called me a failure. I thought about the loan, the one that would come due in 7 days, the one that would give me 51% of Sterling properties when William defaulted. I thought about the 47% of Sterling house I owned, the evidence I had, the DNA analysis, Evelyn's affidavit, Walter's notebook. I thought about the prenup, the fidelity clause, the photos of Dominic and Jessica. Every piece was in place. Every detail was perfect. All I had to do was wait. 48 hours. That's all that stood between the woman I'd been pretending to be and the woman I'd always been. Let the countdown begin. The night before you change your life forever, you don't sleep. You remember. You prepare. You say goodbye to the person you used to be. October 9th, 2024, 3 p.m. I drove to the house in Hyde Park, the house where Walter had taught me to cook, the house where I'd learned to survive. It was October. The trees were turning gold and red. The air smelled like fall. Tomorrow, everything would change. But today, I needed to see her. 3:15 p.m. Evelyn. The caregiver, Patricia, met me at the door. "She's not having a good day," Patricia said quietly. "She doesn't recognize much." I nodded. "Can I sit with her?" "Of course." I found Evelyn in the sunroom, sitting in her chair, staring out the window. Her hair was white. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked so small. I sat down beside her. "Hi, Grandma, it's me, Charlie." She turned to look at me, confused. "Charlie? Do I know a Charlie?" My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Yes," I said. "I'm your granddaughter." She blinked, said nothing. I pulled out a photo album, opened it to a picture of Walter in his chef's coat, standing in the kitchen on Maple Street, smiling. I held it up. "This is Walter, your husband." Evelyn leaned forward, touched the photo with her finger. A faint smile crossed her face. "Walter," she whispered. I flipped to another page. Their wedding photo, 1965, Walter in a suit, Evelyn in a white dress, both of them young and happy. She touched the photo again. Her smile grew a little wider. "We were so young," she said softly. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You were beautiful." We sat like that for a while, flipping through photos, Evelyn murmuring names, remembering fragments. And then I pulled out Walter's notebook, the one from 1987, the one with the recipe. I opened it to the page with the reduction sauce, held it in front of her. "Do you remember this? Evelyn stared at the page, and something shifted. Her eyes sharpened, focused. "That's Walter's handwriting," she said. I nodded. Yes, it's his recipe, the one he was famous for. She looked at me, really looked at me. And for the first time in years, I saw recognition in her eyes. "Charlie," she said. Her voice was clear, steady. Tomorrow is your birthday." I froze. Tears filled my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. I turned 32. She reached out and grabbed my hand, squeezed it, hard. Her grip was strong. Her eyes were sharp. She leaned close, whispered in my ear, "You have to fight back." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "Let them see Charlie," she said, her voice fierce. "Let all of them see." Tears streamed down my face. "Walter and I," she continued, "we're so proud of you." I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "That husband of yours," she said. "That family. They never deserved you." "I'm going to make it right," I whispered. "I promise." She cupped my face with both hands, looked me straight in the eye. "You're strong," she said. "Stronger than anyone knows. Show them." And then just like that, the light in her eyes faded. The sharpness disappeared. She let go of my hands and looked around, confused. "Who are you?" she asked. I wiped my tears, smiled. "I'm Charlie," I said, "your granddaughter, and I love you." She nodded, smiled vaguely, and went back to staring out the window. I stood up, kissed her forehead, and walked to the door. Patricia was waiting in the hallway. "Tomorrow night," I said, 8 p.m., a helicopter will come to pick her up. She's moving to a new home by the lake. Patricia blinked. "A helicopter?" I handed her an envelope. $50,000, a bonus, for taking care of her all these years. Patricia opened the envelope. Her eyes went wide. "Thank you," she whispered. I nodded. "Take good care of her until tomorrow. 6 p.m., the studio, with Nina." I met Nina at my studio apartment in East Austin, the place I'd lived for the past 6 years, the place that had been my refuge. Nina had the checklist. "Captain Reynolds?" she asked. "Ready," I said. "He'll be on standby at the estate. I'll text him when it's time." "Live stream equipment. Tested. My phone's fully charged. Backup battery pack in my purse." "Guest list. Confirmed. William, Victoria, Dominic, Adrienne, Penelope. Plus 12 of William's business partners." Nina looked at me. "Are you sure about this?" I met her eyes. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She smiled. "Then let's burn it down." 10 p.m. final preparations. I laid out my outfit for tomorrow, an emerald green dress. Designer. Something I'd bought with my own money, not the Target dresses Victoria always mocked. I checked the USB drive, all the evidence, backed up 3 times. I opened my laptop, pulled up Instagram, scheduled the post for tomorrow night, 8 p.m. The caption, "To everyone who said I was nothing, watch closely." I attached a photo, the helicopter, the estate, the lake at sunset. 2.8 million people would see it. I called Nina one last time. "If something goes wrong," "Nothing will go wrong," she said. "Get some sleep." I hung up, sat on the edge of the bed, looked around the studio. 400 square feet. The place I'd hidden in for 6 years. The place where I'd built an empire in secret. Tomorrow I'd leave it behind. I thought about the girl I'd been at 19, the girl who'd lost her parents, who'd been taken in by Walter and Evelyn, who'd learned to cook in a kitchen on Maple Street. I thought about the woman I'd become at 25, the woman who'd fallen in love with the wrong man, who'd trusted the wrong person, who'd had her grandfather's legacy stolen. And I thought about the woman I was now, at 31, the woman who'd spent 6 years building an empire, the woman who owned 47% of Sterling House, the woman who held the keys to Sterling Properties, the woman who had the evidence to destroy them all. Tomorrow I would turn 32, and tomorrow the girl who'd lost everything at 19 and learned to survive in silence would disappear. Tomorrow I would rise. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to see tomorrow. In 24 hours, the Sterling family would know my name, and they would never forget it. They say birthdays are a celebration of the day you were born. Mine would be a celebration of the day I stopped dying from the inside out. October 10th, 2024, 4 p.m. I stood in front of the mirror in my studio apartment. The emerald green dress fit perfectly. Elegant, sophisticated, designer. Something I'd bought with my own money. I put on Walter's watch. the vintage Omega he'd worn every day in the kitchen, the only piece of jewelry I'd kept after he died. I looked at my reflection, at the woman staring back at me. "Last time I'll see her," I whispered. "The woman they think they know." I picked up my clutch, phone, USB drive, lipstick. That was all I needed. I texted Nina, "It's time." She replied immediately. "Helicopter on standby. Picking up Evelyn at 7:30 from Hyde Park. Captain Reynolds is ready." I took a deep breath, walked out the door, and drove to the Sterling mansion. 5 p.m. arrival. Victoria answered the door. Air kiss. No warmth. "Charlotte, you're here. On time. How surprising." I smiled, said nothing. I stepped inside and immediately noticed. Cheap decorations, a store-bought cake sitting on the counter, generic, half-hearted, a clear lack of respect. But I didn't care, because in 2 hours, none of it would matter. 5:30 p.m. Dominic's state. I found Dominic on the patio. He was already on his second glass of whiskey. It was only 5:30. Too early. His eyes were bloodshot. His tie was loose. He was pacing, talking to one of William's business partners, trying to act normal. But I could see the cracks. I moved closer, listened. William was talking to another guest. "The market's been brutal. We're restructuring some debt. Nothing we can't handle." Dominic jumped in. "We'll be fine, just a temporary cash flow issue." I knew the truth. The $15 million loan was due in 5 days, October 15th, and they couldn't pay it. I watched Dominic, the way his hands shook slightly when he lifted his glass, the way his jaw clenched when someone asked about the business. He was stressed, panicking, on the edge of collapse, and he had no idea I was the one holding the match. I smiled to myself, walked to the bar, poured myself a glass of water. Stay sober, stay sharp. 5:30 p.m., the patio gathering. There were 12 business partners scattered around the patio, investors, real estate developers, William's circle. I stepped into the group. The conversation quieted for a moment, then resumed. One of the guests turned to me, a man in his 50s. "So Charlotte, what do you do?" "I work in food and hospitality," I said. Dominic's voice cut across the patio, loud, sarcastic. "She means she takes pictures of pasta." Laughter rippled through the group. I smiled, polite, controlled. Something like that. But inside, I was counting down the minutes. 6 p.m., awkward conversations. A woman named Mrs. Lopez cornered me by the appetizer table. "Any plans for children, dear?" "Not at the moment," I said. Adrienne swooped in, changed the subject, steered the conversation away from me. Penelope walked by, looked at my dress, and smirked. "Nice dress." Finally decided to spend some money. "Thank you," I said. She rolled her eyes and kept walking. 6:30 p.m. dinner. We sat at a long table on the patio. Charlotte at one end, Dominic at the far end, as far away from me as possible. The food was mediocre, catered, store-bought sides, no effort. The conversation flowed around me. Business deals, real estate, market trends. No one asked me anything. No one looked at me. I was invisible, just like I'd been for the past 6 years. I checked my phone under the table. Nina had texted. "Everything's set. Helicopter leaves Hyde Park at 7:30. Evelyn's ready." I typed back, "Copy." 6:50 p.m., the toast. William stood up, tapped his glass with a knife. "I'd like to make a toast," he said. "To Charlotte, my daughter-in-law, another year older." He raised his glass, everyone followed. Polite, perfunctory, no warmth. I raised my water glass, smiled, said nothing. 7 p.m., the cake. Victoria brought out the cake, store-bought, white frosting. "Happy birthday, Charlotte," written in blue icing. They sang, half-hearted, off-key. I blew out the candles, made a wish. Let them see. 7:15 p.m., Dominic's unraveling. Dominic was on his 3rd glass of whiskey, maybe his 4th. His words were starting to slur. Penelope was scrolling through Instagram, not paying attention. I checked my phone again. Nina texted, "Patricia has Evelyn ready, helicopter landing in 10 minutes. I replied, "Understood." 7:20 p.m., the shift. One of the business partners turned to me. "So Charlotte, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish in the next year?" Before I could answer, Dominic spoke up, loud, drunk, cutting. "Goals," he said. "Charlotte doesn't have goals. She has hobbies." A few people laughed. uncomfortable, uncertain. Dominic stood up, swayed slightly. Come on, let's be honest here. The patio went silent. Victoria's smile froze. William looked at Dominic. Adriana's eyes widened. Dominic pointed at me. She's been playing house for 6 years, playing chef, playing blogger, but it's all pretend. I didn't move, didn't react, just watched. She's got what? He continued. 3,000 followers. 5,000, who cares? No one's reading that garbage. He took another drink. And now she thinks she's some kind of entrepreneur, but she's not. She's just my wife, living in my house, spending my money. I set my water glass down, slowly, carefully. And you know what the funniest part is, Dominic said, his voice getting louder. She actually thinks she's worth something, but she's not. She's nothing. The patio was dead silent. I stood up, every eye turned to me, and I smiled. Not a polite smile, not a nervous smile. A cold, sharp smile that made Dominic take a step back. Are you done? I asked, my voice calm, steady. He blinked, confused. I reached into my clutch, pulled out my phone, and held it up so everyone could see the screen. Because now it's my turn. And just like that, the match was struck. All I had to do now was let him burn it all down. Before I reveal what happened next at that birthday dinner, the moment that changed everything I need to know you're still with me. Type the number 1 in the comments if you're ready to see how this unfolds. I want to feel your presence here. And a quick reminder, the story you're about to hear includes creative elements for dramatic impact. Some details may be fictionalized for storytelling purposes. If that's not for you, feel free to pause here. There's a moment in every battle when the enemy hands you victory. You just have to be patient enough to wait for it. I'd seen Dominic drunk before, but tonight was different. The company had days left before it collapsed. The $15 million loan was due in 5 days, October 15th, and Sterling Properties had no way to pay it back. William had tried every bank in Texas. No one would refinance. No one would touch them. Dominic's father was desperate. His mother was in denial. And Dominic, who'd spent his entire life coasting on the Sterling name, was about to lose everything. He just didn't know I was the one holding the detonator. 7:20 p.m., the speech. Dominic stood up, swayed slightly. His third glass of whiskey sloshed in his hand. He raised it like he was making a toast. Everyone, he said. His voice was loud, slurred. Let's be honest for once. He turned to face me, pointed at me with the hand holding the glass. Whiskey spilled onto the tablecloth. My wife, Charlotte, the birthday girl. Victoria's smile froze. Dominic, sit down. No, Mom, he said. They should know the truth. The patio went silent. 12 business partners. Adrian, Penelope, all eyes on me. I pulled out my phone, calmly, casually, opened Instagram, navigated to the Wandering Fork account. 2.8 million followers. I tapped Go Live. The stream started immediately. The viewer count appeared in the top corner. 500, 1,000, climbing fast. I set the phone in the center of the table, propped it against a wine bottle, angled it perfectly toward Dominic. No one noticed. They were all watching him. Charlotte is a content creator, Dominic said. He made air quotes with his free hand, mocking. She takes pictures of food for the internet. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. 6 years, Dominic continued, louder now. 6 years she's been doing this, and you know what she has to show for it? Nothing. One of the guests, Mr. Thompson, spoke up. Dominic, I don't think this is appropriate. Dominic waved him off. No, everyone needs to hear this. I glanced at my phone. 10,000 viewers, 15,000. The comments were already flooding in. What's happening? Is this real? Who is this guy? She's delusional, Dominic said, pointing at me again. She thinks she's special, but she's not. William stood up. Dominic, that's enough. It's not enough, Dad, Dominic snapped. His face was red. His voice was rising. The company is drowning. We're about to lose everything. And she's sitting there playing on Instagram while Rome burns. The guests exchanged glances. This was bad, public, messy, the kind of scene that would be talked about for months. Victoria stood up. Her voice was quieter than Dominic's, but just as sharp. Dominic, stop. You're drunk." She paused, then turned to me. "But, to be fair, Charlotte, maybe Dominic has a point." I looked at her, waited. "You've been in this family for 6 years," she said. "And you haven't really contributed, have you? No children, no career, just that little blog." The guests were silent, horrified, because now it wasn't just a drunk husband, it was his mother too. I glanced at my phone. 30,000 viewers, 40,000. The comments were exploding. "OMG, what is this? She needs to leave him. This is so messed up." Dominic leaned forward, his hands on the table, his face inches from mine. "You want to know the truth?" he said. "You were lucky I married you." He straightened up, addressed the whole table. "An orphan. No money, no connections, no future. I gave her everything. I gave her my name, the Sterling name." He turned back to me. "And what did you do?" "You embarrassed me. With your little food photos and your pathetic blog that no one reads." I looked at my phone. 47,000 viewers. "Is this abuse? Someone help her. Call the police." Dominic stepped closer. His voice dropped. Cold, cruel. "You know what the truth is, Charlotte. You think you're something, but you're not. You were always nothing, and you'll die being nothing." Gasps around the table. Even the business partners were uncomfortable now. Dominic wasn't done. He leaned in. His breath reeked of whiskey. "I gave you everything," he said, "and you gave me nothing. No support, no success, not even a damn child." Victoria gasped, "Dominic, stop, now!" But he didn't stop. He was spiraling, out of control. I stood up slowly, calmly, picked up my phone, and turned the screen toward him. 52,000 viewers. "Are you done?" I asked. My voice was steady, clear. He blinked, stared at the screen, confused. "I asked if you're done," I said. "Because 2.8 million people just watched you call me a failure." His face went white. "We're live," I said. I turned the phone toward the guests, showed them the screen. "Right now on Instagram, 60,000 people are watching this." The comments were a blur. "Divorce him? Monster. She deserves better. This is going viral." Dominic lunged for the phone. Turn it off right now." I pulled it back. "No." I dialed Nina, put it on speaker. Her voice came through immediately. "Is it time? Bring her here," I said. I hung up. William stood up, his face pale. "What helicopter, Charlotte? What are you talking about?" Penelope was staring at her phone, her eyes wide. "This is trending. 65,000 people are watching. It's everywhere." Dominic grabbed my arm hard. "What did you do?" I yanked my arm away. "Don't touch me. You've touched me for the last time." And then we heard it. A low thumping sound, faint, in the distance. Everyone stopped, looked around. "What is that?" someone asked. The sound grew louder, closer, unmistakable. A helicopter. The guests stood up, walked toward the edge of the patio, stared up at the sky. The sound grew louder, the wind picked up, the trees swayed. And then it appeared, over the tree line, lights flashing, a Bell 407, descending toward the lawn. "Is that a helicopter?" Penelope said. The guests backed away as the helicopter descended. The wind whipped around us. Napkins flew off the table. Wine glasses tipped over. The helicopter touched down on the lawn, 50 feet from the patio. The rotors slowed but didn't stop. I picked up my phone, looked at the screen. 75,000 viewers. 80,000. I held the phone up, spoke directly into the camera. "My name is Charlotte Bennett," I said, my voice clear, strong. "And for 6 years, I've been called a failure. By my husband, by his family, by everyone at this table. The wind from the helicopter blew my hair back. The noise was deafening. But tonight," I said, "you're going to see who I really am." The door of the helicopter opened. Captain Reynolds stepped out, and behind him, Patricia, helping Evelyn down the steps. Dominic stared. "What the hell is this?" I looked at him, at Victoria, at William, at all of them, and I smiled. "I've played my hand," I said. The noise grew louder. The guests moved to the lawn, and I knew that in 60 seconds everything would change. Sometimes justice doesn't knock on the door. It lands on your lawn in a $1.8 million helicopter. 7:40 p.m., the approach. The sound was deafening. Thwap, 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 thwap. The guests scattered across the lawn. String lights swayed violently in the rotor wash. Women grabbed their dresses. Men shielded their eyes. The Bell 407 appeared over the tree line. Black, sleek, spotlights blazing. It circled once low and slow before descending toward the lawn. William stared up at it. "What the hell is this?" I looked at him, calm, steady. "Transportation." Dominic's eyes were wide. "Who's—" "Mine," I said. 7:42 p.m., the landing. Captain Reynolds's voice crackled over the helicopter's external speaker. "Sterling family requesting permission to land." I raised my hand, waved him down. "Permission granted," I said. The helicopter descended. Grass flattened beneath the rotors. Napkins and plates flew off the patio table. The guests backed away, filming on their phones. The skids touched down. The engine idled. The rotors slowed but didn't stop. 7:45 p.m., the reveal. The door opened. Captain Reynolds stepped out first. Tall, uniform, professional. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "your grandmother is safe." He turned and helped someone down the steps. Patricia, the caregiver, and behind her Evelyn, 78 years old, confused but stable, wrapped in a blanket. Victoria gasped. "Evelyn!" I walked toward the helicopter, took Evelyn's hand. "Hi, Grandma," I said. "Ready for an adventure?" She blinked at me. "Adventure, where are we, sweetheart?" "With me," I said. "Forever." I turned to face the Sterling family. William, Victoria, Dominic, Adrian, Penelope, all of them standing there, frozen, staring. "I have something I want to show you," I said. William's jaw tightened. "Show us what—" "Get in the helicopter," I said. Victoria took a step back. "Absolutely not." I cut her off, my voice firm, final. "Get in the helicopter now, or I'll let your business partners see what happens next instead." I glanced at the 12 guests, all of them still filming, still watching. William understood immediately. This wasn't a request, it was a command. And if he refused, it would be captured on camera, shared, talked about. A public humiliation worse than anything he could imagine. "Fine," he said. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," I said. 7:50 p.m. boarding. I helped Evelyn into the helicopter first. Captain Reynolds secured her seatbelt. Patricia sat beside her. "William, Victoria," and I said. They climbed in, sat in the middle row, silent, tense. "Dominic," I said. He hesitated, looked at me. For the first time all night, I saw fear in his eyes. I leaned close, whispered, "Let me show you who I really am." He climbed in. Adrienne and Penelope followed. They sat in the back row with me. Captain Reynolds closed the door, handed out headsets. "Everyone buckled?" he asked. Nods around the cabin. He looked at me. "Ms. Bennett, confirmed destination. Lake Travis Estate," I said. "You know the coordinates." "Copy that," he said. "ETA 25 minutes. 7:55 p.m. takeoff." The engine roared. The helicopter lifted off the lawn. The Sterling mansion grew smaller beneath us. The guests on the patio became tiny dots. We climbed, higher, higher, until Austin spread out below us like a glowing grid. 8 p.m., the flight. We turned west. The helicopter banked smoothly. The Austin skyline stretched out to our right. Lady Bird Lake reflected the city lights like a mirror. Inside the cabin, silence, tense, heavy. William's voice crackled through the headset. "Explain this, now." "Soon," I said. Victoria leaned forward. "How do you have the money for a helicopter?" I didn't answer, just looked out the window. Dominic's voice came through. Bitter, angry. "This is insane." I turned to him. "No, Dominic. This is the first sane thing I've done in 6 years." Evelyn was staring out the window, her face pressed against the glass. "So high," she whispered, "like a bird." I reached over and squeezed her hand. 8:10 p.m., the approach. We flew over Lake Travis. The water was dark, calm, reflecting the moon. And then the estate came into view. 6,000 square feet, floor-to-ceiling windows glowing with warm light, a dock stretching out into the water, and at the top of the hill, the helipad, professional, stone paved, ground lights marking the perimeter. Victoria stared. Whose house is that? I smiled. You'll see. Captain Reynolds's voice came through the headset. Beginning final approach. The helicopter banked. We circled the estate once. I wanted them to see it, all of it. The sprawling lawn, the massive windows, the dock, the lake. Prepare for landing, Captain Reynolds said. 8:15 p.m., the landing. The helicopter descended toward the helipad. The stone pad was perfectly lit, ground lights forming a clean circle. The skids touched down, smooth, professional, perfect. The engine powered down. The rotors slowed. Stopped. Captain Reynolds turned to face us. We've arrived. Welcome to Bennett Estate. William stared at him, then at me. Bennett. That's Charlotte's maiden name. I unbuckled my seatbelt, opened the door, stepped out onto the helipad. Good observation, I said. I turned and helped Evelyn out. Patricia followed. Then William, Victoria, Dominic, Adrian, Penelope. They all stood there on the helipad, staring at the house, at the lake, at the property that stretched out in every direction. What is this? William asked. I looked at him, at all of them. This, I said, is mine. I stepped off the helipad, walked toward the house. Behind me, the family who'd called me a failure. Ahead of me, the proof that they were wrong. They say home is where the heart belongs. This house was where I would finally show them my heart had never stopped beating. 8:15 p.m. entering. I helped Evelyn down from the helipad. Patricia supported her other arm. We walked along the stone pathway. Lights embedded in the ground guided us toward the house. I unlocked the front door, pushed it open. Victoria stared. You have a key. I looked at her. I have a lot more than a key. 8:17 p.m., the main hall. High ceilings, a crystal chandelier, warm hardwood floors. On the wall, a single framed photograph. Walter in his chef's coat, standing in the kitchen on Maple Street, smiling. William stopped, stared at the photo. That's Walter, your grandfather. This house honors him, I said, and my grandmother. 8:20 p.m., Evelyn's room. I led them down the hallway, opened a door on the first floor. A spacious bedroom, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, a large bed with soft linens, a reading chair, a bookshelf filled with her favorite books, jazz albums on the shelf, a record player in the corner. The bathroom had a walk-in shower, grab bars, non-slip flooring, everything designed for safety. This is your room, Grandma, I said. You're going to live here, with me, with the care you deserve. Victoria's voice was sharp. Her room? What do you mean? She's moving in, I said, with me. Patricia guided Evelyn to the window. Evelyn pressed her hand against the glass. It's beautiful, she whispered. So peaceful. I squeezed her hand. You're home. 8:23 p.m., the kitchen. I led the Sterling family down the hall, through the living room, into the kitchen. Professional grade. Viking range. Sub-zero refrigerator. Marble countertops. Copper pots hanging from the ceiling. Adrienne stared. This kitchen is insane. In the center of the island, a custom glass display case. Inside, a set of French chef knives. Vintage, beautifully preserved. And beneath them, a brass plaque. Walter Bennett, Master Chef, 1942 to 2016. My voice broke. These are his knives, from Chicago, from the restaurant where he made his name. I touched the glass. He gave them to me. Gave me everything he had. I opened a drawer, pulled out the notebook, the one from 1987, yellowed pages, faded ink. He also gave me this, I said. I held it up. His signature reduction sauce, the recipe that made his restaurant famous. I looked at Dominic. The recipe that was stolen 6 years ago. 8:26 p.m., the accusation. William stepped forward. Stolen. What are you... I cut him off, looked at Dominic. Do you want to tell them, or should I? Dominic said nothing. 2017, I said. 2 months after we got married. I cooked dinner for your family. I used this sauce. I held up the notebook. You asked me for the recipe. I gave it to you. Because I trusted you. You gave it to your father. Sterling House put it on the menu. No credit, no permission, nothing. William's face went red. Wait a minute. The sauce saved your dying restaurant, I said. The reviews raved about it. Business exploded. You built your entire rebrand around it. I stepped closer. Something you stole. Dominic's voice was defensive. Our chef modified it. Liar, I said. I pulled out a file, set it on the counter, lab reports, chemical analysis, side-by-side comparison. 99.7% molecular match, I said. Between Sterling House's sauce and Walter's recipe, I had it tested. I slid the papers across the counter. William picked them up. His face went pale. You stole from my grandfather, I said, and you profited from it for 6 years. 8:30 p.m., the living room. I walked into the living room, gestured to the sofas. Sit down, there's more. They sat, William, Victoria, Dominic, Adrienne, Penelope, all of them silent, staring. I stood in front of them, picked up my tablet from the coffee table. For 6 years, I said, you called me a failure, pathetic, nothing, a joke. Dominic opened his mouth. You've been saying it for years, I said. And tonight you said it in front of 12 witnesses and 2.8 million people online. I held up my phone. The live stream was still running. 89,000 viewers. Penelope checked her phone. Her eyes went wide. She's right. This is everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. 8:32 p.m., the first reveal. I tapped the tablet. The screen lit up. Instagram, The Wandering Fork, 2.8 million followers. A grid of photos, gorgeous food, perfectly styled, every shot anonymous. No face, just food and stories. Victoria leaned forward. I've heard of The Wandering Fork, that mysterious food account everyone talks about. I looked at her. I am The Wandering Fork. Silence. Penelope blinked. What? I've been running it for 8 years, I said. I built it from nothing. I scrolled, showed them the brand partnerships, KitchenAid, Le Creuset, Williams Sonoma. These companies pay me between $500,000 and $1 million per partnership, I said. 8:34 p.m., they start to understand. Adrienne shook her head. That's not possible. I scrolled to the next image, my cookbook, the cover. The Wandering Fork Recipes for Restless Souls. Amazon #1 bestseller. 100,000 copies sold, I said. $1.2 million in royalties in the first year alone. William stared at the screen. You wrote a bestseller. I scrolled again. The Wandering Fork Culinary Academy. Over 25,000 students enrolled. My online courses, I said. $297 per course. Do the math. Dominic pulled out his phone, typed into the calculator. His face went white. That's $7.4 million, he said. I nodded. Just from the academy. There's more. I scrolled, showed them the spice line. Whole Foods, Target, Kroger, nationwide distribution. First year revenue, I said. $1.8 million. Victoria's hand went to her mouth. I scrolled, showed them the restaurants, 3 of them. Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. I own 60% of each, I said. Annual revenue per restaurant over $2 million. William stood up. This can't be real. I looked at him. It's very real. I set the tablet down, looked at all of them. My net worth on, I said, is $38.5 million. The room went silent. Dominic stared at me. You're lying. I picked up my phone, pulled up my banking app, showed him the screen. He went pale. But I'm not done, I said. The money is just the beginning. What comes next will destroy you. They thought I was playing around with Instagram. I was building an empire. 8:35 p.m., the 3 restaurants. I scrolled to the next image on the tablet. A sleek modern restaurant, floor-to-ceiling windows, a packed dining room. The logo, Ember and Oak, Dallas. I own 60% of this restaurant, I said, under an anonymous name. I scrolled again. The Wandering Table, Houston. Another scroll. Provisions, San Antonio. Combined. I said these 3 restaurants generate $6 million in annual revenue. My share is $3.6 million per year. William stared at the screen. You own 3 restaurants. While you were sleeping, I said, I was working. 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. every night, for years. 8:38 p.m., the spice line. I scrolled again. A photo of grocery store shelves, rows of spice jars, the label, Wandering Fork Spice Blends. My spice line, I said. Nationwide distribution, Whole Foods, Target, Kroger, 500,000 units sold per year, $2 million in revenue. Penelope leaned forward. I think I've seen those. They're in your kitchen, I said. You've been using them. You just never thanked me. 8:40 p.m., the total. I pulled up a spreadsheet, displayed it on the screen. Restaurants, $9 million. Academy, $12 million. Brand contracts, $8 million. Investments, $6 million. Cash reserves, $3.5 million. Total net worth, $38.5 million. The room went silent. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. 38.5 million, I said. To be exact, I looked around the room, at the furniture, at the house, at the life I'd built. In the house I bought with my money, I said, sitting on furniture I paid for. I looked at Dominic. Who's the failure now? 8:42 p.m., Dominic's denial. Dominic stood up, his face red. This is fake, photoshopped. You're lying. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, Chase Private Client, and held the screen toward him. Account balance $3,487,392.18. His face went pale. Want me to refresh the page? I asked. Watch it increase. I stepped closer to him. Every time you called me pathetic, I earned another $100,000. Every time you mocked my blog, I signed another brand deal. Every time you told me I was nothing, I proved you wrong. I looked him in the eye. You fueled me, Dominic. Your cruelty was my motivation. 8:44 p.m., Adrienne's question. Adrienne leaned forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. Wait, how did you hide all of this? We file joint tax returns. There are audits, paper trails. I've been filing separately since 2018, I said. Married, filing separately. Dominic agreed because I told him it would help his business deductions. Adrienne frowned. But transactions this large flow through a network of limited liability companies and an irrevocable trust. I said, everything is legal. Everything is fully taxed. I have forensic accountants, tax attorneys. A Big Four accounting firm handles my returns. William's voice was sharp. You set up shell companies. They're legitimate business entities, I said. The same structure you use for Sterling Properties. Nothing illegal, just strategic. Adrienne stared at me, then at her phone, then back at me. This is actually very sophisticated. 8:46 p.m. Sterling House. I scrolled to another image. The Sterling House logo. The restaurant William and Victoria had built. The one Dominic had tried to save. Remember this, I asked. William's jaw tightened. What about it? The restaurant that was saved by my grandfather's stolen recipe, I said. I could sue you for intellectual property theft. I have the evidence, the lab analysis, the affidavit, the notebook. I paused. But I have a better solution. I pulled up a document, a shareholder registry. William Sterling, 51%. Various LLCs, 47%. Other investors, 2%. You own 51%, I said. Do you know who owns the other 47? William stared at the screen. Who? I tapped the screen. The LLC names expanded. Culinary Ventures, LLC. Evergreen Holdings, LLC. Bennett Enterprises, LLC. The registered agent names appeared beside each one. Charlotte Bennett Sterling. Charlotte Bennett Sterling. Charlotte Bennett Sterling. It's me, I said. William grabbed the papers from the table. His hands were shaking. You bought shares. 8:48 p.m. The acquisition strategy. Over 3 years, I said. During the pandemic, your investors wanted out. They were bleeding money, desperate to cut their losses. I approached them through different LLCs, paid a premium, 20% above market value. They sold willingly. Small purchases, I continued. Each LLC bought 4 to 6%, under the 10% threshold. Adrienne checked her phone. Texas law, transfers under 10% don't require disclosure to the majority owner. I used 8 different LLCs, I said. Registered in different states, different agents. You never noticed until I consolidated them this past June. William's voice was hoarse. But we received a notice about Culinary Ventures Holdings. That was me, I said. By then it was too late. 8:50 p.m., the ultimatum. Your restaurant, I said, is built on my grandfather's recipe. Stolen intellectual property. I held up the notebook. I have the original. I have DNA evidence proving a 99.7% match. I have my grandmother's signed affidavit. I have lab analysis. And I have Dominic's admission on live stream in front of 89,000 people. Adrienne's face went pale. Shit, Texas law. I said, allows a minority shareholder to force a buyout in cases of intellectual property theft. I looked at William. I could sue. I would win, and I would take your restaurant. I paused. Or you voluntarily transfer an additional 4% to me, making me the majority owner at 51%. William's mouth opened. No sound came out. You keep 47%, I said. You can continue working there if you want, but I control it, and I restore my grandfather's name. I pulled up another image, a mock-up of a menu. At the top, Walter Bennett signature reduction sauce. That's what it will be called, I said. William's voice was sharp. You're blackmailing us. I'm offering you a choice, I said. Litigation and public humiliation, or a quiet transfer. I looked at all of them. If I sue, the headline will be Sterling Family Stole Recipe from Deceased Chef. Your reputation will be destroyed. Your business partners will leave. Your investors will pull out. Everything you've built will collapse. Victoria looked at William. Her voice was quiet. She has us. Adrienne nodded. Legally, she's right. I looked at William. I will get justice for my grandfather, one way or another. The room was silent. I picked up the tablet. But the restaurant is just one piece. What I'm about to say next will upend your entire world. The live stream counter blinked past 120,000 viewers when I turned back to face the Sterling family. William's face had gone from flushed red to an alarming shade of purple. Victoria clutched the edge of the mahogany table as if it might anchor her to reality. Adrienne stared at her phone screen, refreshing my Instagram page over and over, her mouth opening and closing like a fish, gasping for air. Penelope had her hand pressed against her chest, breathing in short, panicked bursts. But Dominic looked like a man watching his entire world collapse in real time. You're lying. His voice cracked on the second word. You don't have that kind of money. You can't what? I interrupted, my voice steady and calm. Can't have built something without you knowing. Can't have earned $38.5 million while you called me pathetic. Can't have quietly acquired enough leverage to destroy everything you've ever cared about. I pulled my phone from my clutch and opened my banking app. The screen glowed in the dim dining room light as I held it up for everyone to see. The balance read $3,487,392.18. That's just one account, I said quietly. The liquid cash I keep on hand. The rest is tied up in LLCs, trust funds, real estate, intellectual property, and investment portfolios managed by a team of CPAs and attorneys you've never heard of because I made sure of it. William finally found his voice. This is impossible. You filed joint taxes, married filing separately. I corrected him. Since 2018, Dominic signed off on it every year because his accountant told him it would give him better business deductions. He never read the fine print. None of you did. Adrienne's voice was barely a whisper. You hid all of this for 6 years. I didn't hide it, I said, meeting her eyes. I built it, in plain sight. Every insult you threw at me, every snide comment about my little blog, every time you told me I was wasting my time, I was earning another $100,000. Every family dinner where you made me feel small, I was signing another brand deal. Every night, Dominic told me I was worthless. I was teaching another 1,000 students in my online academy. I turned to Victoria, whose hands were trembling on the table. You asked me once when I was going to give up the blog and focus on being a real sterling wife. Do you remember that? She nodded mutely. That was November 2018, the month I signed my first 6-figure brand partnership. I smiled and said I'd think about it. Then I went home and put every dollar into an irrevocable trust that Dominic's name will never touch. William slammed his fist on the table. Enough of this theater so you have money, congratulations! That doesn't give you the right to humiliate my family in front of... He gestured wildly at my phone. The entire internet. You're right, I said softly. The money alone doesn't give me that right. I reached into my clutch again and pulled out a slim black folder. I placed it on the table between us, letting the silence stretch as every pair of eyes locked onto it. Sterling Properties, I said. Your real estate development company, your family legacy. The empire your grandfather built in 1957 and your father expanded through the 80s and 90s. The business that's been the cornerstone of the Sterling name for 3 generations. William's jaw tightened. What about it? 2 years ago, you needed capital for the Riverside Tower project. Remember the 20-story luxury development on the edge of downtown Austin? The banks wouldn't loan you the full amount because your debt-to-equity ratio was too high. You were leveraged to the ceiling on other projects, and after the pandemic, lenders got nervous. William's face went pale. So you went to a private equity firm, I continued. Evergreen Capital Management. They loaned you $15 million at 18% annual interest over a 24-month term. The contract stipulated that if you defaulted, they had the right to convert the debt into equity up to 51% ownership of Sterling Properties. That loan was paid off months ago, William said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, I said gently. It wasn't. The due date is October 15th, 5 days from now. You were supposed to refinance 6 months ago when interest rates dropped, but every bank you approached turned you down. Do you know why? Silence. Because I made sure they would. Dominic shot to his feet. You're lying. You don't have that kind of influence. I don't. I agreed. But the venture capital firm that backed my restaurant expansion does. And the private equity group that invested in my academy has relationships with every major commercial lender in Texas. And when those firms put in a quiet word that Sterling Properties was a high-risk investment with unstable family leadership, the banks listened. William's hands were shaking now. You sabotaged us. I didn't sabotage you, I corrected. I let you sabotage yourselves. You took the loan, you missed the refinance window, you ignored the warning letters. I just made sure no one would bail you out at the last minute. I opened the folder and slid a single sheet of paper across the table toward William. This is the debt schedule. As of today, October 10th, you owe Evergreen Capital $18,700,000. You currently have $2.3 million in available cash. That leaves a shortfall of $16.4 million. You have 5 days to come up with it. And if we can't, William's voice was barely audible. Then per section 12.4 of your loan agreement, Evergreen Capital converts the debt into equity. They take 51% ownership of Sterling Properties. You become a minority stakeholder in your own family business. Your vote doesn't matter anymore. Your decisions don't matter. The Sterling name remains on the building, but the power... I paused, letting the weight of the words settle. The power belongs to someone else. Dominic's face had gone ashen. Who owns Evergreen Capital? I smiled. 3 venture capital firms and a network of angel investors. But the largest single shareholder, the one with effective control, is a holding company called Bennett Legacy Ventures, LLC, registered in Delaware in 2020, owned entirely by a trust established in my name. The room went utterly silent. If you default, I said quietly, I become the majority owner of Sterling Properties. Every building you've ever developed, every contract you've ever signed, every asset your family has built for 70 years, it all becomes mine. You'll work for me, you'll answer to me, and every decision you make will require my approval. Victoria let out a choked sob. Adrienne buried her face in her hands. Penelope stared at me like I'd grown a second head. But Dominic looked at me with pure, unfiltered hatred. You planned this, he whispered. For 6 years. You married me just to destroy us. No, I said, and for the first time that night my voice softened. I married you because I loved you. I gave you my grandfather's recipe because I trusted you. I would have built an empire with you if you'd let me. I stood smoothing the front of my dress. But you didn't. You stole from me. You mocked me. You made me feel worthless. So yes, I spent 6 years building something you could never touch. And now I'm taking everything. I picked up my phone. The viewer count had climbed to 137,000. In 5 days, Sterling Properties will be mine. Sterling House Restaurant is already 47% mine, and I have legal grounds to force a buyout. Your empire, your legacy, your name, it all crumbles, starting October 16th. I turned toward the door, my heels clicking on the marble floor. But I have one more secret, I said over my shoulder, that will make Dominic's nightmare perfect. And I walked out of the Sterling mansion for the last time, leaving them in the ruins of everything they thought they owned. The live stream counter blinked past 145,000 viewers when Dominic's desperate voice cut through the silence. Wait, we're married. Community property Texas is a community property state. Is it? I said softly, reaching into my clutch. I pulled out a navy blue document and placed it on the table. Gold letters gleamed under the chandelier light. Prenuptial agreement. Sterling/Bennett. 2017. Victoria's face drained of color. Remember this? I asked. Your mother insisted I sign it 2 weeks before our wedding, Dominic. She said the Sterling family had assets to protect. Victoria pressed trembling fingers to her lips. I wrote that to protect us. You did? I agreed. Just not the way you intended. I opened the prenup to page 3 and read aloud, my voice steady. Article 4, Section 2. All assets acquired prior to the date of marriage, February 15, 2017, shall remain separate property. I looked at Victoria. You assumed I had nothing before the wedding. You were protecting sterling wealth from a poor food blogger who might claim half of everything in a divorce. You never worried about this clause because you thought I was broke. Victoria whispered, "That's exactly what I thought." Smart, I said, except you made one mistake. I pulled out my phone and displayed a scanned bank statement dated March 2016. I launched the Wandering Fork 11 months before our wedding. My first brand deal paid $500. By June 2016, I earned $2,000 per sponsored post. By January 2017, 1 month before the wedding, I was making $5,000 per month. I slid printouts across the table. Under Texas family law, this is separate property with premarital origin. Even though the blog grew during our marriage, the source was premarital. Everything I built stays legally mine. Adrienne's face went pale. Mom, you set the cutoff date as the wedding day. If she started earning money even 1 day before everything afterward is hers. Exactly, I said. March 2016, first brand deal. June, first partnership. January 2017, multiple contracts, all before February 15th, our wedding date. William turned to Victoria, his voice shaking. You protected her money. Victoria's tears spilled over. I didn't know she had money. She was just a blogger with a few followers. I thought I was protecting us from hers. You never imagined I'd succeed, I finished. The prenup you forced me to sign protected my $38.5 million from Dominic. Dominic slammed his fist down. This can't be legal. It is, Adrienne said, her lawyer instincts overriding her shock. Separate property with clear premarital origin is untouchable in Texas. Mom wrote a perfect prenup. She just protected the wrong person. I looked at Victoria. I don't blame you. You were protecting your family. You just didn't think I deserved protection too. Victoria buried her face in her hands. I underestimated you. We all did. Yes, I said quietly, you did. I pulled a manila envelope from my bag and removed 3 8x10 photographs. Dominic, there's one more thing. The first photo showed Dominic and a young woman entering a hotel lobby. Timestamp July 15th, 2024. Recognize her, I asked. Adrienne gasped. That's Jessica from my law firm. She's a junior associate. The second photo showed them kissing at a hotel bar. The third showed them entering a room together. 3 months ago, the Driscoll Hotel. There are more photos, different dates, same woman. Dominic's voice was strangled. Where did you... I hired a private investigator last October. When you started coming home at 2 a.m., smelling like someone else's perfume. Victoria whirled on Dominic. You cheated on her after everything... Mom, I can explain. Don't, I interrupted. I flipped to page 7 of the prenup. Article 8, Infidelity Clause. In the event of proven adultery, the offending party forfeits all rights to spousal support and inheritance from family trusts. I met Victoria's horrified gaze. That clause was your idea. You wanted to protect Dominic from gold diggers, but he broke it. Not me. I turned to William. Under the prenup, Dominic loses his inheritance from the Sterling Family Trust. Adrian's whisper was barely audible. That trust is worth $12 million. Dominic was set to inherit $4 million. Was, I corrected. Adultery voids that right, legally binding. William stared at his son. You destroyed your own inheritance. Dominic's face crumpled. Dad, no. William's voice was ice. You've ruined everything. I placed the final document on the table. Petition for divorce, State of Texas. Already filed out and signed by my attorney. I slid it toward Dominic. I'm filing Monday. Grounds adultery, emotional abuse, irreconcilable differences. With this evidence, it'll be fast and uncontested. I leaned forward. You'll sign, because if you fight, all of this becomes public court record. The affair, the stolen recipe, the company collapse. Sign quietly, I'll keep details private. Fight me and I bury you. Dominic stared at the papers, hands shaking. I used to love you, he whispered. No, I said softly. You loved controlling me, but I was never yours to control. A frail voice spoke from the corner. Charlie. We all turned. Evelyn sat in her wheelchair, eyes clear and focused, a rare lucid moment piercing the Alzheimer's fog. Did you tell them about the house? I knelt beside her. Not yet, Grandma. Tell them. Walter wanted you to have it. I faced the family. 6 months ago, Grandma updated her will. The Hyde Park house where Walter taught me to cook, she left it to me. Victoria stood. Evelyn, you can't. I can, and I did, Evelyn said firmly. That house is worth $2.1 million now. It's Charlotte's. Along with Walter's life insurance, $300,000 I never touched. She squeezed my hand. The Sterlings never deserved you, Charlie. Walter and I always knew. This is your inheritance, your birthright. She looked at Dominic. That man broke you. I may forget everything else, but I remember that. Her eyes clouded again. The moment passed. I held her hand, tears streaming. William buried his face in his hands. I can't believe this. Victoria reached toward me. Charlotte, I'm so sorry. You should have seen it, I said, but you didn't want to. Adrian's voice cracked. I was cruel. I'm ashamed. You were, but you can do better. Teach your children differently. Penelope looked up from her phone, tears falling. 200,000 people are watching. They're calling me a bully. They're right. Then change, I said gently. You're 29. It's not too late. I didn't do this for revenge, I said. I did this for justice. Justice for Walter, whose recipe was stolen. Justice for Evelyn, who deserves peace. Justice for myself, the woman told for 6 years she was worthless. I met each of their eyes. I'm not worthless. I never was. And anyone who's ever been told that, remember tonight. Captain Reynolds is waiting to fly you back, I said. Your cars are at the mansion. Go home. William stood slowly. And Monday. My attorneys will contact you about Sterling Properties. For the restaurant, you have until 5 p.m. Monday. Voluntarily transfer the remaining 4% or I file suit. The family rose and walked to the door defeated. Dominic was last. Charlotte, Goodbye, Dominic. He left. I closed the door. Alone. The house fell silent. For the first time in 6 years, I could finally breathe. I stood at the closed door, exhaling a breath I'd been holding for 6 years. Behind me, the house was quiet. Warm light spilled across polished hardwood floors. The lake outside shimmered under moonlight. It's over, I whispered. Nina emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She'd stayed behind to coordinate logistics while I faced the Sterling family. Charlie, you did it. We hugged, and for the first time all night, I let myself cry deep, shuddering sobs that came from a place I'd kept locked away for far too long. Let it out, Nina murmured. You deserve this. I can't believe it's real. I managed between breaths. Nina pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. Headlines were already forming. Mystery food influencer revealed in epic takedown. Texas woman exposes husband's abuse, live to 2. 8 million viewers. The Wandering Fork $38 million empire hidden in plain sight. I laughed through my tears. That's a lot. You earned every word, Nina said. At 9:45, I walked down the hall to Evelyn's room. Patricia, her full-time caregiver, had already helped her into comfortable pajamas. My grandmother sat by the window gazing out at the lake. "Hi, Grandma," I said softly, kneeling beside her chair. "Welcome home." She looked at me, her eyes distant. "Home. Yes, this is your home now, with me, forever." She turned back to the window, watching moonlight dance across the water. A small smile touched her lips. "Beautiful. You deserve beautiful things," I said, taking her hand. "You and Grandpa gave me so much. This is how I say thank you." She rested her head on my shoulder. We sat in silence, watching the lake together. For a moment, the Alzheimer's didn't matter. We were simply here, together, safe. At 10:30, I sat on the balcony off my bedroom, wrapped in a blanket with a mug of chamomile tea. I opened Instagram on my phone. The live stream had ended, but it was saved in my highlights. Final concurrent viewership, 347,000 people. New followers overnight, 1.2 million. The comments flooded in. "You're my hero. I'm leaving my toxic marriage because of you. The strength it took to do this, unbelievable." I posted my first full-face photo, a simple selfie, no makeup, genuine smile. The caption read, "Hello everyone, I'm Charlotte. This is me. Thank you for witnessing my truth tonight. To everyone out there in situations like mine, you are not worthless. You are everything. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I hit post. Within seconds, thousands of likes poured in. At 11 p.m., I lay in bed, my bed in my house built with my own hands and sweat and silent determination. No Dominic, no Sterling mansion, no more pretending. Tomorrow would begin the rest of my life. I slept peacefully for the first time in years. The following weeks unfolded like chapters in a book I was finally allowed to write myself. On Monday, October 14th, my attorney contacted the Sterling family. William signed over the remaining 4% of Sterling House. I now owned 51%. The menu was updated that week. Walter Bennett's signature reduction sauce, established 1987. A framed photo of Walter was hung on the restaurant wall, his kind eyes watching over every table. On Tuesday, October 15th, the Sterling Properties loan came due. William couldn't pay. On Wednesday, the equity transfer went through. I became majority owner of Sterling Properties, a 70-year-old real estate empire built by 3 generations of Sterlings, now controlled by the woman they'd called worthless. I appointed a new CEO, someone with ethics and experience. I offered William a consulting position. He accepted, humbled but grateful. Dominic was removed from all company roles. His inheritance, voided by the prenup's infidelity clause, disappeared. On Friday, October 18th, Dominic signed the divorce papers. Uncontested. No spousal support. Clean severance. The second week, I did my first public interview with a major food magazine. For the first time, I showed my face as the Wandering Fork. The article was titled, "The Woman Who Built an Empire in Silence." I talked about abuse resilience and Walter's legacy. The segment aired on Good Morning America. I sat across from the host, calm and composed, and said the words I'd needed to hear at 19. Your value is not determined by people who refuse to see it. You determine your own worth. The Wandering Fork's follower count climbed to 4.2 million. New brand deals worth $2 million were signed within days. A major publisher reached out about a memoir. I told them maybe when I'm ready. Sterling House was booked solid for 3 months. Reviews mention the sauce, incredible flavor. Knowing the story behind it makes it even better. By the 3rd week, Evelyn had settled beautifully into her new home. Her daily routine included watching the sunrise over the lake, breakfast in a sunlit room, afternoon naps, and evening music. Patricia and 2 rotating nurses provided 24-hour care. Evelyn had more lucid moments here. Maybe it was the peace. One morning, she said, "Walter would be so proud. I wish he could see this." I squeezed her hand. "He does see it, Grandma. I feel him here." We looked at Walter's knives displayed under glass. "Every time I cook, he's with me. On Sundays, I established a new tradition. Captain Reynolds flew us over Austin in the Bell 407, me, Evelyn, and sometimes Nina. We soared above the city, the hill country fields of wildflowers. Evelyn loved it. She clapped her hands and laughed like a child. During one flight, she pressed her face to the window and said, "I'm flying, Walter, I'm flying." I cried happy tears. This was why I'd done it all. By the 6th week, the Sterling family reached out. Victoria sent a long, sincere email. "I'm sorry." I replied briefly, "I forgive you, but I need distance. Maybe someday." Adrian sent flowers with a note. "I'm teaching my daughters about respect because of you." Penelope deleted her Instagram and started therapy. Dominic moved to California, staying with a friend. I felt no joy in his downfall, only relief that he was gone. On Thanksgiving, I cooked dinner at the estate. Guests included Evelyn, Nina, Patricia, Captain Reynolds, and my small team. The table overlooked the lake, set with care. I prepared Walter's recipes, his famous roast reduction sauce apple tart. Before we ate, I raised my glass. To Grandfather Walter, who taught me that cooking is love made tangible. To Grandma Evelyn, who chose love even when memory faded. To Nina, who never let me quit. To everyone here, thank you for seeing me when others didn't. I paused, looking around the table. This isn't just Thanksgiving. This is a celebration of becoming. I made it, and I'll never make myself small again. We toasted. We laughed. We ate. Evelyn had a lucid moment and laughed at someone's joke. I looked around the table and thought, this is family. That night, I stood on the balcony again. The lake reflected stars like scattered diamonds. I thought 6 years ago I married a man I thought would complete me. But I didn't need completion. I needed to remember who I was. Grandpa taught me that we all have something valuable to offer. The Sterlings tried to make me believe I had nothing. But I had everything. I just built it in silence. They called me worthless. In front of millions, I proved them wrong. Not for revenge, for justice, for Walter, for Evelyn, for myself, and for everyone who's ever been told they're not enough. You are enough. You always were. Sometimes you just need to build your world on your own terms. This is my story, and it's only just beginning. I checked my phone one last time. An Instagram post from earlier showed Evelyn and me both laughing the lake behind us. Caption, home. 2.1 million likes. The top pinned comment from a stranger, "You saved my life. I'm leaving my abuser tomorrow. Thank you." I smiled and closed the phone. I stepped inside. The house was warm, glowing. Evelyn slept peacefully in her room. I walked to the kitchen and began prepping content for tomorrow, because the work continues, but now on my terms. The story isn't over, it's only just begun. And to you listening to this story, remember this: I didn't build my empire alone. God gave me strength when I had nothing left. God placed people like Nina and Walter in my path when I needed them most. And God reminded me, even in my darkest moments, that my worth was never defined by those who couldn't see it. Looking back, I see the mistakes I made. I stayed silent too long. I gave trust to someone who didn't deserve it. I let family betrayal nearly destroy me because I was afraid to fight back. The pain of family betrayal runs deep. It comes from the people who are supposed to protect you. Don't be like me. Don't wait 6 years to reclaim your voice. Don't let the cycle of family betrayal make you forget who you are. When I finally acted, some called it family revenge. But this wasn't about family revenge, it was about justice. Real family revenge would have left me empty. Instead, I chose to rebuild, to reclaim what was mine, and to prove that truth always wins. Here's what I learned. Protect your peace. Document everything. Build in silence. And when the time comes, stand tall and speak your truth. Don't let anyone, family or otherwise, convince you that you're worthless. My perspective, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Justice isn't cruelty. And sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. If this story moved you, please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Hit that share button if you know someone who needs to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories of resilience, transformation, and hope. Thank you for following this journey to the end. Please note, The stories shared on this channel contain fictionalized elements designed for educational and inspirational purposes. If this content doesn't resonate with you, feel free to explore other videos that better align with your interests. God bless you, stay strong, you are enough.